Leeds United are set to face off against Brighton this weekend, travelling all the way down to the AmEx and hopefully getting some points. Leeds United have never beaten Brighton at the AmEx, but I feel like now might not be the worst time to play against them for a good few reasons. I will get into those as we go through the video. I'll be covering my sort of predicted lineup for Leeds United, what we can expect from Brighton and what they've managed to do so far this season, some of the injuries that they're suffering with, and ultimately what we might need to do tactically. But before I get into all that more advanced, deeper in the video stuff, we got to talk about Daniel Farke and his press conference, because we had a little bit of an update on the injury situation. As we all know, we've had a few problems recently. Last week, we had a raft of illnesses, injuries. Stack had a bit of a problem. Various players weren't available, and we weren't quite informed in that press conference that they weren't, because Farke's got to keep some of his secrets, otherwise West Ham will prepare for the reality of the only 11 that you could have realistically put out. But now all of those injuries seem to have subsided, seem to be done, and Leeds feel like they're in a pretty damn good situation where we can just pick the 11 that works best, mostly. Willie Gnonto isn't a topic for the first 11, as Daniel Farke so elegantly puts it every single time, but he might make the squad, which means that we've got 24-ish players to pick from, and I've gone with a fairly similar lineup to last time. Starting with Lucas Perry in goal, I think he did more than enough in the last match. He did what he had to do. The goal that West Ham scored was almost impossible to keep out, but he did what he could. Jayden Bogle obviously starts because he's the best right-back that we have available, with Biol and Rodon in front of Lucas Perry, because they've been doing a pretty damn good job. Biol, I think, is due a little bit of a run in the side. And at left back, you go Gabby Goodmanson. Just a bruise, not something more permanent, which is very, very good to see. In midfield, you have the sort of one holding midfielder of Ethan Ampadu that drops into the three when you're in possession. And then in front of him, you play with Tanaka because I think his style works really well against Brighton. And in addition to that, you go with Longstaff to bring that little bit of physicality. I'll get into why in a little bit of time, but I kind of want Longstaff to tire himself out in the first hour or so. On the wings, you go Okafor. That just makes sense if he's available. He's clearly above the other wings that we've got. But on the right flank, I'm going to stick with Brendan Aronson, because the amount of work that he's put into improving himself and his game and making sure that other sides don't have any fun playing against him is ultimately what we kind of want to see time and time and time again. You've got to stick with Brendan Aronson because he's a little bit of a beacon in this side at the minute. Then up top, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. If it's not working by the hour mark, you give Metro a go, and ultimately you kind of hope that that has to work, I guess. Playing against a Brighton side where I feel like they're very, very consistent with the way that they play. So the only time they haven't played a 4-2-3-1 this season was in the last match against Arsenal. That was a Carabao Cup match, so I'm not really going to consider that one. We will face a team playing in a 4-2-3-1. Interesting thing is the way that they sort of set that 4-2-3-1 out. So the predicted lineups that we've seen in various places include Jorginho Rutter in the 10, which is fine, but he's a sort of floating 10. He's someone that's been given the license to move about a little bit. But they don't have all the players that they would necessarily want available to them either. If I very, very quickly pull up Premier Injuries, which is a very, very good site for tracking the players that are unavailable, that are injured, all that kind of stuff, there's plenty of players that aren't around for them. Adam Webster is gone for an extended period of time, Solly March until 2026. Jack Hinchelwood isn't available right now. James Milner played in the Carabao Cup match, but there's a bit of a question mark as to whether he will be fit enough to play this weekend. Veltman, probably out. Matoma, probably out. Gruder, probably out. These aren't all 100% guaranteed players that will or won't be available, but that list of players that are at the very least very, very doubtful is good for Leeds United, because someone like Matoma combined with Rutter would cause a massive problem for us. The fact that isn't going to happen is very nice, and it means a lot of their game might have to run through Jorginho Rutter. I'll have a quick look at the predicted lineup that I saw for Brighton earlier on, just to give you a rough idea of what would be joining him in that front line. But it's not something that I'm super terrified of, to be honest with you. Yakuba Mente would be their left winger, who is admittedly very, very decent, but he's not someone that terrifies you. Kadliolu will be on the other side, which is, again, not super terrifying, and Danny Welbeck up top, who is a good striker, but I feel like he loses that physical battle against Biol and Rodon every single day of the week. So for me, the danger man there is Jorginho Rutter. And that's why, as I mentioned previously, we want Longstaff to absolutely exhaust himself in the earlier phases of this match, because Ruter needs to be effectively shut down. Set Ampadu on him. Ampadu has played against him a hell of a lot. So, in training, Ampadu's learned how Jorginho Ruter likes to attack. Couple of little snappy tackles. Ruter has to change his game, which means that the players around him need to change their game. That will ultimately benefit us going forwards. Get Longstaff on him. Longstaff, tire himself out, and then you can just bring on Gruev on 60 minutes. Bring on Gruev, he can do exactly the same thing as Ethan Ampadu, because they've both played against Jorginho Ruter in the past, in training, consistently, saying, okay, well, you've got to work out how to beat us now. Which, sure, he might have worked out in training, but he's not worked that out with the context of the Brighton side around him. And when we're talking about the context of the Brighton side, we look at them and we feel very, very impressed by this big team that are incredibly good and well built, and they manage the budget incredibly well and all this kind of stuff. Looking in the table, they're a single point ahead of us so far this season. That is weird Gabby Goodmanson headed own goal away from us being exactly where they are in the table. We are incredibly close to them at the minute. And that's not counting just performances, that is counting one weird freak touch off our left back's wonderful bounce that went into the back of our own goal. Instead, if you're looking at sort of performance levels, expected points are admittedly one of those metrics a lot of people don't like, but it measures how many points should you have gotten from this game of football. Okay, cool, rough idea of performances and where you should be. We're 5th, according to that table. In terms of defensive competence as well, when it comes to expected goals against, we're, again, 4th or 5th. We are up there for sides that are performing consistently, performing well. The only issue that we've got is something that we are going to have to deal with in this game, and it's consistency. And by that, I mean not making silly mistakes. If you have a look at the goal that we conceded against West Ham, that came from someone's lost their man. 2-1, but still not great. If you have a look at the match against Burnley, it's a case of close Schauner down a little bit quicker. It's a case of Rodon/Stack, don't lose your man. Match against Spurs is a couple of weird deflections, and I think Darlow was personally to blame for one of the goals, but that's fine. Losing matches or dropping points for us so far this season has come from those little individual errors, and I'm sure that Daniel Farke has been all over that in training and saying, look, concentrate and make sure that we don't make those mistakes, because the moment those mistakes come in, that's where we're dropping the points. If we'd managed all of the points that we deserved in this match so far, this season, that's the one, then we would be way more comfy. And we would be saying, okay, well, I mean, we're as good as Sunderland right now. We can just watch the relegation race from up here. But we're not there yet. What we need to do is start turning these performances into results going forwards. And this is why I'm having a look at the fact that we've not beaten Brighton in a very, very long time. I'll have a look at the specific head-to-head, actually. Because the last time that Leeds beat Brighton was in 2017. And on the road, if we have a very, very quick look, we managed to draw against them in 2021. We lost to them in 2022. We lost to them again in 2021. We lost them in 2016 and again in 2016. And we lost to them in 2015. And then before that, it was as early as the 1980s. We don't fare very well against Brighton on the road. And this is the perfect opportunity for Daniel Farke and his squad to turn that around. For me, I think if we are playing at our best, we can very much win this game. So I'm going to go confident, as I always do. And it might eventually prove to make me look like a bit of an idiot. But I like to commit to that positivity. So I'm going to go with a 2-0 win. But let me know what your predictions are down in the comments below. Also, if you haven't yet, I'd hugely appreciate you popping a like on the video. Subscribe as well, because those active viewers and the viewers that do things are what YouTube is counting at the minute. So the more of those that you are, the better, I suppose. But yeah, let me know what your predictions for the score are. Like, subscribe, become a channel member if you fancy. You get videos like this one early, and it's lovely. Hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you later. Toodaloo.